Hi and welcome to LawWiser. Today we have a very interesting discussion which is regarding ease of doing business in Malaysia. As we all know, Malaysia is one of the most advanced economies in Southeast Asia and it has a robust export-oriented manufacturing base. And it's also covering a lot of other sectors which are becoming very attractive for foreign investors to invest in. And some of these foreign investors also include Indian companies as well. So today we would be focusing our discussion on the ease of doing business in Malaysia. What are the incentives, initiatives that the Malaysian government has brought in force, which actually helps Indian companies to invest there? How is the supporting ecosystem and which sectors are actually driving that? So to discuss this and a lot more, we have a very interesting panel here. We have Miss Lily. She is partner at Zaid Ibrahim Co, a member of ZICO Law, based in Johor Bahru, Malaysia. Welcome, Lily. Thank you for taking time out for this. We also have Mr. Ravi Singhania, managing partner at Singhania Partners LLP. He's very well experienced in the field of corporate commercial, and he's here to guide us what the Indian investors actually think about investing in Malaysia. So thank you, Ravi, and thank you, Lily, for taking time out for this. So to begin our conversation, as we discussed that, a lot of initiatives are being brought by the Malaysian government as well for foreign investors. So, Lily, if you can just highlight, from the lawyer itself, perspective from Malaysia, that which are these key initiatives that you think would be attractive to Indian companies and that would help in providing ease of doing business in Malaysia?
Thank you very much, Sania. I'll just get the ball rolling. Hi, my name is Lily. I'm a partner of Zaid Ibrahim Company. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak. Malaysia has always been an investment-friendly country located in the heart of ASEAN. So we are connected strongly in the global supply chains of the production and services network. Our government have launched many initiatives to attract foreign investments to Malaysia, including recently, we have revamped our Companies Act to ease the procedures and legal requirements applicable to companies incorporated in Malaysia. Incorporation procedures have been simplified and it only takes about 3 to 5 days to establish a private limited company in Malaysia. So most investors will set up a private limited company because it helps to limit their liability and to facilitate obtaining the licenses and approvals required to operate their business. In a snapshot, it only requires one minimum director and shareholder to establish a company in Malaysia. There is no minimum par value or shareholding requirement. All filings to our company's commission can be conducted electronically. So Malaysia is also well established in its infrastructure. We have world-class ports, transportation hub, and a stable supply of utilities to support investments and developments in the country. Almost all government services have been digitalized and applications to all the authorities can be conducted online instantaneously. So currently, our government is on track to roll out about 5G network services, which it plans to have coverage throughout the country. So another key initiative is that our government provides free education and training to all our children. So it has developed a productive workforce for the country. Almost everyone in the workforce has a strong command of English and is skilled or semi-skilled. So investors to Malaysia can expect that they are freely accessible workforce to support their business. So finally, let me touch about government incentives. Government have provided a lot of grants, incentives, and tax relief initiatives. And these are available to all investors in certain technology and promoted sectors. So these sectors would include manufacturing, tourism, and approved services sectors. For example, R&D, information technology related services, and environmental protection activities. So investors in these promoted sectors can apply for incentives and tax reliefs available from our government. Lastly, let me talk about our Malaysian Investment Development Authority. So they are more commonly known by its acronym MIDA. So MIDA provides a one-stop service center to assist investors in sourcing for location to invest, obtain regulatory approvals, connect the investors to other state agencies, and provide incentives to investors. So MIDA has an office in Mumbai to better assist Indian investors interested to invest in Malaysia. So these are a few of the key initiatives that our government has provided to actually attract investors to Malaysia. Yes. Thank you.
I was wondering, in India, we need a foreign investment promotion board approval for some of the sectors. While foreign investment is free in most of the sectors, are there such restrictions in Malaysia also for foreign investors to invest in Malaysia?
It's actually industry specified. So if you are talking about manufacturing, then you need a manufacturing license from our investment authority. So if it's a services, for example, you are talking about education, setting up a university, then you need approval from our Ministry of Education. So it's actually industry specified, not a federal approval for all investors.
I guess it's a similar situation. Most Indian investors would be looking at setting up manufacturing facilities in Malaysia. And I guess for that, you don't need any regulatory approval to set up a manufacturing facility.
You do, because you need a license, but it applies similarly to locals and to foreigners. So it doesn't discriminate against foreigners. So as long as you want to do manufacturing in Malaysia, you will need manufacturing license, and there's certain criteria to meet. So I will actually talk about promoted sectors and about the licenses, right, briefly in that industry question, which is like question 3, I think. So so for professional services, then again, the approval must come from that registered body. So, and if they want to do hotels, then it's from our domestic trade industry. So it's not a general foreign approval.
My sense was that whether it's an Indian investor or a local Malaysian investor, there is no additional requirement for foreign investors like from India to invest for manufacturing or services business.
No, there is an extra approval required if you buy land. So when it comes to real estate transactions, all foreigners need to pay extra. So
I guess in a way it's just similar to Singapore, where for foreigners there's an additional stamp duty for purchase of land, right, but there's no blanket restriction. So
I wasn't sure whether I'll touch on the entire land and asset purchase because it's not really license and approvals, and it's so for approvals for manufacturing and all that, right, it's actually industry specific. So I was talking about sectors, etc. I will briefly touch about the restricted industries. So where no foreign investors, or you must have local or Bumiputra shareholding. So that's in question 3, I think. So oil and gas, education, banks, financial services, all that, right? So there is a limit to foreign investments. But generally for manufacturing, no restriction whatsoever. That's why we welcome manufacturers to come here.
So just that, that actually takes us further, from what Mr. Singhania asked about, if there are any restrictions or not. So Mr. Singhania, if you can also just share from an Indian investor perspective, what would their expectations be when they are looking to invest in Malaysia? And how do you think they, compare it in comparison with the other ASEAN countries that are there? How would they prefer Malaysia as a market?
When an Indian investor is looking at investing overseas, they're either looking at investing for expanding their business such as a new market, or they're looking at it as an outsourcing center for procuring goods or services for the Indian market. Indian businesses are looking for both the activities. They are looking at expanding their market share and moving out to other Asian countries. And Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, they all come at the top of their mind for these activities for expanding their market. For creating a manufacturing base for the goods they need for the Indian business, I think Malaysia is again a good center. What they would look at is at ease of doing business in terms of setting up a company there or acquiring an existing business, getting land and other utilities to set up their manufacturing facility. And lastly, what they would want is good quality workforce. And I just heard Lily mention that there is highly skilled, qualified workforce available. And land, she did mention there are certain restrictions, but I guess they may not be applicable for manufacturing facilities or leasing space for setting up factories in Malaysia. Is that true, Lily?
Yes, generally, there are no restrictions for investors to invest in the manufacturing sector. So there are certain restrictions where they are industry specific, but investors are allowed to have 100% equity in companies that are going to manufacture. So of course, there will be concerns because we will have concerns about environmental issues and right now ESG. So, but under our initiatives, right, we have liberalized all requirements, especially in the manufacturing sectors. So, but we obviously would like investors to actually approach us, and we'll check for you whether there are any other regulations that apply to your intended business.
My sense is that IT services, apparel and garment industry, certain manufacturing facilities, for example, for construction industry, those are some of the preferred companies which are looking at setting up bases in Malaysia. Is that, you think, correct?
Actually, currently, right, Indian investors are usually in, yeah, you're right. We have got textile, we have got steel, we have got biochemical companies and pharmaceutical companies. Those are the few that have already set up market here in Malaysia. So what we would hope to attract is actually a lot more Indian companies that would invest in services, because what we lack right now is moving towards digitalization, a lot of AI, a lot of high-tech kind of innovative industry services that I would think that some of the Indian investors could bring their knowledge and expertise to Malaysia to export that here. So construction has always been a very popular industry, but generally all foreign investors would be welcome here. So statistically, like I said, so right now what I have seen, I've checked the list. So most of the Indian investors manufacturing will be in those few that I've mentioned for textile, biochemical, and pharmaceutical products.
Because, as you just said that you both of you have shared the preferred sectors that you think, are there from the Malaysia and the Indian perspectives. So Lily, if you can also share what is the role of rules and the laws, that play while for preference of this sector.
Okay, I've actually emphasized again that generally there are no restrictions to the manufacturing sector. So investors are allowed to hold 100% of the equity in all investments. So whether they are new investors or whether they are existing investors that want to expand their business. So most new investments to Malaysia are targeted in the manufacturing sector because they are attracted by the competitive cost of doing business here, the dynamic skill and non-skilled workforce, and matured economy. So investors will require both a manufacturing license issued by MIDA, which is our investment authority, to approve their manufacturing activities, and a business license from the relevant local authority where their businesses are located to be able to operate their business. So this year, under our National Investment Aspirations Initiative, our investment authority has actually identified five key sectors that can attract foreign investors. So these sectors are actually the electrical and electronics sector, pharmaceutical sector, digital economy sector, aerospace and chemicals industries. So there will be actually a lot of development opportunities for investors to actually invest in these 5 targeted sectors. There's also growth opportunities in the e-commerce and cybersecurity sectors as more companies are moving their businesses onto digital platforms. In the services sectors, key growth areas are in the green technology, R&D, hospitality, healthcare, supply chain and businesses, and education and training sectors. So applicable approvals are required from the relevant ministries governing these sector-specific industries. So for example, if you are setting out an education center, you'll require approval from the Minister of Education. So there are generally very relaxed requirements for foreign investors to participate, and a lot of these sectors allow for majority or even 100% equity shareholding. You can also apply for incentives and tax reliefs offered by the investment authorities. So I will talk about a few examples of these incentives. So the first is the pioneer status. So companies with a high level of technological expertise can apply to be a pioneer status. And in this case, they are eligible for tax relief exemptions. Another relief will be the income tax allowance. So qualifying companies, right, are allowed to actually set off their tax payable against this qualifying capital expenditure deduction that is actually granted by our government. In Malaysia, certain restricted industries, so where foreigners are not allowed to invest, or where there are local or Bumiputra equity shareholding. So these sectors are actually very limited, hopefully. So specific regulatory approvals are required, including, for example, from our Malaysian Central Bank or professional registered body. So these sectors include oil and gas and petroleum, automobile, energy and utilities industries, the financial, insurance, logistics, wholesale and distributive services, and professional services industries. So these are some of the industries where actually foreign investors will have to check with us whether they are allowed to invest in Malaysia. We are hopeful that the government continues to look at measures to liberalize these industries so that Malaysia can remain competitive and attractive to foreign investors.
Lily, we often have the issue of compliances for foreign investors coming to India as regards the corporate compliances or employment law compliances or welfare state compliances. Do you have similar compliances requirements in Malaysia?
To be honest, right, our ministers are actually very matured and they can deal with all sorts of issues that can be raised by investors. The guidelines and the laws that they've set are very, very clear. So for employment or welfare for employees, regulations and all that, right? It's very similar to all the regulations in the other ASEAN or Asia Pacific countries. So the departments could have specified very clearly under our Employment Act or Welfare Act, like for example, where how many days of leave or sick leave or benefits that are required to be granted to each employee. And they are very helpful. You can check with them online and they'll come to visit you as well to be able to render advice. So most of our clients actually have no issue dealing with all this compliance issues. Our corporate governance rules are actually also quite developed. So in comparison to Singapore or UK, where it's actually quite similar, we actually, like I highlighted, have very relaxed compliance rules. So for example, right now, companies do not even require to hold physical annual general meetings. So all meetings can be conducted online or just circulate a resolution across by the directors to be signed by directors and shareholders. So this is to minimize cost of doing business as well, and to also ease any requirements for traveling. So there's a lot of benefits that investors will actually enjoy once they do business here, because like I said, we have already advanced quite digitally. Everything that deals with applications to the government can be done electronically and instantaneously. So it's fast, it's cheap, and it's very attractive to investors.
Great. Thank you, Lily. Thank you for actually sharing all that with our audience and the different, requirements that are there, the restricted practices, sectors as well that are there, where they need a local, to invest in with. So that actually just takes us to our last question as well. As we all know that, there are certain sectors that you had just highlighted, like consumer, digital, and manufacturing, which are preferred for investors, which are preferred by the investors. So, can you also highlight, what opportunities or the kind of support system that actually Malaysia provides for investment? And Mr. Singhania, you can add in your perspective as well that what kind of ecosystem or the support system that Indian investors would be looking in while they are thinking to invest in Malaysia.
Actually, right, I would think that the opportunities are two-pronged. So because of the pandemic as well, the government has actually come up with a lot of new initiatives, grants, so financial incentives, right, to actually kickstart the economy. Additionally, because everyone has to move their business online, so there are opportunities in new market, under the new normal that we have not explored before, right, for businesses to explore. So maybe I can point about two key opportunities that I think Indian companies can explore. So firstly, maybe about smart factory or smart facilities, connected plants. So I've highlighted that the manufacturing sector is actually the critical growth driver of Malaysian economy. So last year, they've actually contributed about 23% of the country's GDP. So our government has launched Industry 4.0 policy in 2018 with the objective of transforming the manufacturing industry and its related services. So we need the manufacturing industry to be smart, systematic, and resilient. Applications and solutions to support a mobile workforce, such as AI and machine learning technology, is urgently being sourced. So Indian companies can actually explore this growing AI market. Secondly, technology growth in the e-commerce and digital economy. So we keep throwing terms like digital economy, digitalization, but actually we all know that most companies have to move their businesses online. So retail e-commerce growth sales was probably the biggest industry that jumped last year. So everyone was doing retail e-commerce business. Connectivity is an important factor to strengthen this e-commerce industry. So our government has actually launched various initiatives to set up digital free trade zones, multimedia super corridors in strategic locations in Malaysia. So this ease access to cross-border infrastructure, remove complex trade regulations and processes to allow value chain to communicate. There's vast opportunities to explore how solution partners can help address some of the challenges businesses are facing. So we need to digitalize our business, drive customer engagement, and enhance customer satisfaction under this new normal climate. These are the few industries that we hope Indian investors can target and explore when they invest or collaborate with the local Malaysian companies in Malaysia.
Yes, Mr. Singhania.
What Indian investors would look at is facilitating these investments. Though India and Malaysia have been friends for many decades, and there's a fair amount of tourist travel between the two countries. However, when it comes to making an investment in a foreign country, the Indian investors would love if there was something equivalent of the India Investment Center, which the Indian government established in many countries outside of India to facilitate investments into India. So perhaps an equivalent of that of Malaysia in India, perhaps that might help. Also within Malaysia itself, for foreign investors, I wonder like MIDA or something like that body could help investors facilitate. And equally important would be the relocation of senior executives of a company when they go and first set up a business in a foreign country. The CEO or CFO, the Indian company would prefer that somebody they have worked with at their company is able to relocate there to supervise the setting up of that business there. And equally important would be for facilitation of visas and other things for other key expats from India into Malaysia. And I hope Zaid Ibrahim could help the Indian companies with that as well.
Yes, so actually, I know that the Malaysian-Indian Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement was actually launched on 1st July 2011. So we have already closely collaborated and cooperated for the last 20, 30 years. So Malaysia has also participated in many free trade agreements, the latest being the Regional Comprehensive Economic Policy, RCEP, that we are rectifying hopefully in March 2022. I've just checked as well that the Indian High Commissioner to Malaysia, His Excellency Mr. Reddy, so he just on 8th January last month, so reiterated India's commitment to strengthening bilateral cooperation and enhancing trade and commercial collaborations with Malaysia this year. So at the event, he actually emphasized again that they will strengthen bilateral cooperation. So hopefully with G2G close cooperation, a lot of investors will also be able to be attracted to invest in Malaysia. Like I said, actually, MIDA has offices throughout the country in Mumbai, so they can physically assist a lot of investors, or I'm sure you can communicate with them either online or through calls. So what they will do is not only to assist investors to locate areas or locations where they want to set up their premises. It's really a one-stop center. So they'll guide you on setting out, acquiring the property, and then the regulatory approvals that you require, which I said was actually the manufacturing license and the business license. And then later on, when you need to start operations, etc., if you have issues with the local utilities board or with the state agencies, they are actually the key person for them to actually guide you all throughout. So really, it's a one-stop center. They'll hold your hand until you start your business operations. In addition to all of that, they are also the key agency who assists you for tax relief and government grants. So really, it's really a one-stop center. So if your business is actually applicable, that it's a high-tech investment business, or they are able to obtain a pioneer status grant, then actually there's a lot of incentives that are available to the investor.
Great. Thank you, Lily, for actually sharing all of that. And thank you, Mr. Singhania, for actually also highlighting, what all, from an Indian investor's perspective as well, which I'm sure will give a good idea to, the Malaysian as well, that what they are actually looking for and, which are the preferred sectors as well. Anything to add on, Mr. Singhania?
I think the food processing business between India and Malaysia has also been quite prominent. And
yes,
perhaps Lily may want to add a word on that also, if that's correct. I'm not sure if that's correct.
I have the list, so maybe because they are not registered with the investment board, so there may be a lot of food Indian investors who are already here, who run a food manufacturing business, and I'm sure if they have been investing, then there shouldn't be any issue about it. Right now, again, for me, food, actually, there are no restrictions, again, for foreign investors to invest. So it's one of the industries that should be very popular because we have easy access to a lot of raw materials. And, Malaysia does have a huge agriculture industry as well. So palm oil and all that, and plantations. So if there are investors who are interested in the food market or food technology, or even downstream, if they are going to sell or retail and all that, then I'm sure this is attractive investment hub for them to consider.
Great.
So we welcome all investors, and even if it's just to make an inquiry about an industry that are interested in, we'll be happy to actually answer any queries.
So thank you so much. Thank you actually for taking time out for this discussion and contributing so much. Thank you, Lily, and thank you, Mr. Singhania.